Hello and welcome to another episode of DCU Daily, and we're back today talking about the Superman movie, but more specifically, we're here to talk about Lobo and how he may or may not fit into the Superman movie, or maybe even the Supergirl movie that is meant to go into production. I think it's either later this year or early next year because it's set for a 2026 release date. And we've been talking about Lobo with you guys on the show recently because you guys keep bringing up the idea that maybe there'll be a cameo. Jason Momoa has, of course, over the years been campaigning for it, both actively and passively, and there have been many hints at potentially him being cast for the character or as the character. He's a lifelong fan of Lobo, and of course, he's already done his part as the King of Atlantis, and now that the DCEU is behind us, he can probably focus his attention on if he were to come back into the fold at DC, maybe going with a different character in this new universe, the DCU. So let's talk about that and let's see, what kind of history there is behind this idea of a Lobo movie. Because believe it or not, the idea for a Lobo movie has been around for almost 15 years. So there is a lot to get into there, and then maybe we can kind of figure out if that gleans any sort of insight for us regarding what the future of Lobo, the character on screen, might be. So John, welcome into the show as always. How are you doing today?
Talking about a fan favorite cult character, so I'm definitely excited for that. So, hell yeah, let's get fucking into it. Hell yeah.
Yeah. Well, as far as Jason Momoa is concerned, he loves the character of Lobo. People love the idea of him playing Lobo. It feels like um, Lobo is about as perfect. It would be as perfect a casting with Jason Momoa as like Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man was. It's almost like it fits, like a hand fits a glove. He's already done his due with DC before. Do you think that James Gunn would be wanting to kind of dive into the world of Jason Momoa's, infinite and endless charisma and kind of bring him back into the fold as part of the
I
DCU?
mean, yeah, I think so. Like, the man was literally born to play Lobo. Like, if there is any character that this man needs to play is Lobo. Like, he could be 80 years old and decrepit, and he would still need to play Lobo if he hadn't already. Because the thing is, he was good as Aquaman. Like, he was fine. Really like he wasn't really Aquaman. He was just like more so like a guy dressed up as Aquaman, which isn't bad. Like, but I mean, nobody would ever think that the first Aquaman movie would make over $1 billion, and that's the highest grossing DCEU movie to this day. Obviously, with it being done, so no DCU movie is going to break that record with no DCU anymore. So I mean, he clearly did something right, and the movie was really good.
It was a
So
great movie. I mean, it's just
yeah,
give him credit obviously for what he brought to the film, but it's
yeah.
also everything else around him. I think James Wan was a good fit. And I mean, Peter, speaking of, the DCU, Peter Safran is one of the he's the other side of that co-CEO coin with James Gunn, and
Hmm.
Peter Safran produced both of those Aquaman movies. And not only did the first Aquaman movie make like $1 billion and became the highest grossing DCEU film, but the second Aquaman movie even, made more money than any movie since the first Aquaman movie did for the DCEU. So it was, there were two movies that together grossed over $1.5 billion, and a lot of that is due to the personality, the charisma, and just the endless energy that Jason Momoa brings to the screen every time he takes on a character. But we're here to talk about not Aquaman, but rather we're here to talk about Lobo. Now, there's been some rumors going around from, a couple of different people in the industry or people who like to, kind of sell themselves as insiders. My Time to Shine H on X mentioned recently that a solo Lobo film is in development at DC Studios. Now, there is a history of the Lobo film, at Warner Brothers and now by virtue of that DC Studios potentially. That doesn't mean there is one in active development, but that is the rumor that My Time to Shine, H sort of started. But he's not the only one to sort of bring up Lobo in recent times. We have also had Daniel RPK mention that and we went through this on the show recently, and you guys can go back and watch that. But just to kind of bring it up again, since we're talking about the character of Lobo, Daniel RPK mentioned in one of his, I think, newsletters or podcasts that Jason Momoa is potentially being or reportedly being eyed for a role in Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. We kind of read into that. The casting calls is basically calling for a character that you might interpret as Lobo potentially. There is no direct like line between the casting call and like, oh yeah, that's definitely Lobo, and yes, Jason Momoa would fit that perfectly. So you could definitely take that rumor with a grain of salt. But knowing that these two rumors are out there, knowing that Jason Momoa has already met with James Gunn from when he first started as the co-CEO of DC Studios, do you think there's stuff that's been brewing for a while? And if so, where
Yeah.
does it end? Do we get to a Lobo solo movie? Do we get him in Superman that's filming right now? They might have even shot scenes potentially on a soundstage, or do you think that he's gonna first show up as like a cameo in a Supergirl movie, and then eventually he might get his own film?
I think, I mean, as we both know, the idea of a Lobo film has been part of DC films since pretty much past 2 decades ish, or probably longer than that. I mean, I just know that Momoa would be perfect, and if I were to say anything, I mean, that's what they kind of did with the Tomorrowverse, with the first film being Superman Man of Tomorrow and Lobo making a cameo there. And with how, even though that film could be described as putting too much into it, the thing that made it work was like these three aliens were the last of their kind, last son of Krypton, the last Caesarian, and the last Martian. So like the way they did that was actually really interesting. So I think, and plus, I remember somebody mentioning on one of our last, like I think like a week ago at this point, somebody
Yeah,
mentioned um, that there was a character in Woman of Tomorrow where it was a bounty hunter, and they're like, okay, though it would be perfect because, well, in the original story, that is, it was perfect because then they could just take that bounty hunter out and then replace him with Lobo in this smaller role, or however big he had of a role in that story, whoever that bounty hunter was. So that would make sense. Like, again, broaden the world. It would just be too perfect because it's like a cosmic story, and like Supergirl is a known name relative. I mean, with the show, and her cameo is in, well, essentially glorified cameos in The Flash and like Smallville and that kind of thing. So people know the character, and then her own feature film like in the
right.
80s, but less said about that the better. Um
I mean, the costume was nice, but
yeah,
as far as the quality of the movie, of course, it was very low budget, um, very
and it
forgettable for the most part, at least in the
yeah,
cultural
it's
zeitgeist.
like
Even
two and a
though
half hours long too. It's like, why the fuck is
that's
a
really
Supergirl?
long.
That's like,
I'm
it's
like,
like, I looked it up because it was funny, because I was we sometimes, what I do with my friends is we do like drunk roasts of bad movies. So we plan to do
that's a really
Supergirl,
good
and we
idea.
were like, oh yeah, this shitty low budget like spinoff of Superman, this shit's probably like 90
Hmm.
minutes, not even. That shit is like 2 hours 40 minutes.
You're like,
And it's
this
like,
thing is still going. You're just,
why the fuck is it so goddamn long? That's ridiculous. Anyway,
yeah,
so I think, and the fact Lobo has made his debut in live action just on Krypton. I thought the guy who did it was really good, even though he wasn't like big.
uh huh.
He still got. I think he got the personality to a T, and I think that would just be really fun. And I think having him as a bounty hunter and then played by Jason, it would just be too perfect, which makes me skeptical that they would do that. I think this might be too good to be true, because I mean, Jason Momoa has mentioned that he would love to play the character. And one of the last times somebody had that, we got him in a cameo, and then we didn't see him ever again, with Joe Manganiello as Deathstroke, who would have been like the most perfect fucking casting for Deathstroke, and
Dude,
he would have been
I
fucking
I do
amazing.
wish
But
they bring him back because I mean, obviously that character particular iteration never went anywhere, but they also that leaves a lot of that potential still unfulfilled. So why not just bring him back? We know there's other actors coming back to play the same kind of role in the new DCU, like
mhm.
Amanda Waller and Peacemaker. So you could easily just, I mean, why not? Like I'm like, there's nothing there in terms of
Hmm.
because you don't even have like a story that was attached to him beyond just the one scene he was in that you would be
And he
contradicting
was also in
potentially,
Zack Snyder's
right?
Justice League for
He
like two
was
seconds. I don't even know
2 seconds,
if that was
right?
actually him though. It might have been like a CG fucking double, like it was with the. Oh my god!
No,
When I
I
looked
think
it
it
up.
was him. No, 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 it was him because there's behind the scenes photos like Zack Snyder put out
Okay,
character
because I remember I was watching
shots.
that and I saw
Yeah.
the Flash getting suited up, and I'm like, oh my god, the CGI looks fucking terrible. But I guess now it's
Yeah,
just a joke
the
nowadays that the
tracking on that
Flash is
shot
so.
wasn't very good.
Yeah, and the Flash is just
Yeah.
associated with fucking bad, you know, with fucking
Yeah.
bad CGI. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
but I think it would be perfect. I would love to see it so much because Lobo is just such a weird character. And the thing is, this would be perfect time because he is the Lobo is the actual great parallel that DC has to Deadpool. Even though like DC wants to make Harley Quinn their Deadpool for some reason, I don't get it, but like Lobo is perfect. Lobo is the only thing that he doesn't have for from Deadpool is the fourth wall breaking. But outside of that, he's pretty much very similar. He kind of started out as a villain, became an anti-hero, cracks a lot of jokes at others' expense, is really violent. Personally, if I had to pick, I do prefer Lobo a little bit. But well,
I
the
mean, the
more literal,
character was really created to
yeah,
sort of
it was sort of
parallel that and
yeah, because the whole
like
thing
be a
was like he
counter
was
to the
supposed to
serious
be.
heroes in Marvel back in
Yeah,
the
he was supposed to
90s.
be a
Yeah.
satire of like 80s
Yeah.
action heroes like Sly
Hmm.
Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he was supposed to be like this over. He was like the like making fun of the excess of the
Yeah.
80s of like
Hmm.
those big budget action movies like First Blood Part 2 and Commando, where they were just fucking ridiculous, and that's
Oh
what
yeah.
it kind of he kind of just became what he was meant to parody, but like it's still
Yeah.
he's still a fun character. Even though I know people in the comments are probably going to be like Ambush Bug is technically the actual like better Deadpool parallel, but like I'm saying as someone who can actually get a movie made about him, Lobo works a
Right.
hell of a lot better. And I just think that that would be awesome. And the thing is, but it's been stuck in development hell for a while. I don't know if they'll ever like get it because like I believe in like 2009 they had Guy Ritchie, and then Guy Ritchie left to do, and they wanted it to be PG-13, which is fucking stupid, but this was before Deadpool, so they probably
Right.
didn't think it could be a success. And then
I mean, okay, hold
um
on, but like, let's kind of
yeah,
before we sort of skip through this whole process, I wanted to
yeah,
ask you about the whole because it's very interesting, like how this whole timeline plays out. I found this article on Fandom Wire recently, and it's sort of the author here does a good job of sort of digging through the history of the movie. So going all the way back to 2009, it looks like
yeah,
in 2009 is when we first heard news that a Lobo movie was in development and
yep,
Guy Ritchie was attached, or
yep,
according to this article that I found, I think from Variety, he was locked for Lobo.
yeah,
So that's where it started. Like, what do you think? Because I mean, 2009 is before the DCEU was even a thing. 2009 is right after The Dark Knight came out, and it was before the Green Lantern movie came out with Ryan Reynolds. So we're really taking like this is 15 years ago.
yeah.
Um, I mean, you could see that Joel Silver, Akiva Goldsman, and Andrew Rana. Akiva Goldsman, isn't he the one who's now running Star Trek? Is that am I
No, you're
connecting that
thinking
wrong?
of oh, Alex Kurtzman, but I Kaiva
Oh,
Goldsman, I don't know if he's part. I don't think he's part of Star Trek. He's still. I don't know what he's doing now, which is good because Kaiva Goldsman fucking sucks. He's terrible. He's riding that Oscar that he won like fucking 25 years ago, so he can fucking he sucks.
well, I
But
think Alex Kurtzman and him were involved with the Star Trek
yeah,
reboot with J.J.
probably
Abrams.
both are
So
untalented
that's where I
douchebags.
connected him. And he worked on The Beautiful Mind, which is what he was really famous for. And then he also was part of Batman and Robin. So I mean,
Yeah,
two opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of quality. But yeah, so what do you think about the idea of if they were to, I mean, Guy Ritchie's still doing movies, and the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, plenty. He's got The Gentleman TV show on Netflix. He's not necessarily the peak of his game today. I think maybe some of his best work is behind him, or at least some of the best work that we know him for is in the
yeah.
past and not necessarily the recent stuff he's done. But do you think Guy Ritchie still makes sense potentially to bring? Because he was in
I
the
do
fold and
think
he's out of the
so.
fold. But do you think they would bring him back potentially at Warner Brothers or
Yeah,
DC Studios?
I think Guy Ritchie, as long as he's like, as long as it, because he kind of goes in and out. Like he does like something really, really good, and then he does something really dumb. So as long as we get if we're talking about recent films, Ministry of
Yeah,
Ungentlemanly Warfare, Guy Ritchie, and not Aladdin, Guy Ritchie, I think we should be okay. Like
right.
because I feel like his like really weird offbeat stuff, like imagine if the guy who did Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels did a Lobo movie. Just like that would be just perfect. Absolutely fucking perfect. Because he nails the comedy, he nails the action, and he has a stylistic creative vision for a lot of his movies. So I do think Guy Ritchie would have been really good, but the problem is he wanted to work on, I think it was his Sherlock Holmes
The
sequel,
sequel.
Game of Shadows, whatever the fuck that was called. He
And
wanted to work on
not
that
into the what
instead,
is
which
it?
ended up
Whatever it was.
sucking. So, oops.
Yeah. Well, clearly he did end up working on that. He made that choice. I mean, was that? Do you remember if that was the only reason why he ended up not taking on
I
this
think that was
project?
pretty much the main reason. And then
Well, okay. So
and
then,
maybe there was like creative differences because they wanted it
yeah.
PG-13, if I were to guess.
And
So
he probably wanted rated R, which I
yeah.
mean, I think this is before Deadpool existed, before Logan. So clearly, I think Hollywood was very reticent to the idea of a rated R superhero movie, even though it was Lobo. I mean, the executives at Hollywood who, they might have a banker background, not a storytelling background, might be looking at him and like, but it's still a comic book movie. Like, we can't make it rated R. We want to actually make money from this, which is the kind of thinking that I think Hollywood has relaxed a little bit on, and because of the success of movies like Deadpool, Joker, and of course Logan, there's many examples now where, I mean, the Deadpool Wolverine movie is currently tracking to make like $1 billion. I can easily see a great Lobo movie making $1 billion, particularly with Jason Momoa, who's already made $1 billion with Aquaman.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's a
It's
track
like
record. You can easily calculate that trajectory there.
if James Gunn
So
and WB don't want to do this, it just proves that they are allergic to making money. Like that's what it really is. It just proves it's like, okay, we're let's like pump out, let's like get rid of the Batgirl movie, which had potential, but let's like keep the guy who's a star, who's our star, who like fucking chokes people and beats people up and kidnaps people. Like, yeah, that's gonna be the movie that makes us $1 billion. Yeah, because that fucking makes sense. And then you know and then let's release the movie that's gotten horrible, horrible test screenings from day one and been reshot like 20 million times, which ended up being Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. So
I
it's
mean,
like,
to be, but that's a different regime of Warner Brothers,
yeah,
right?
I
Let's
know, I
not
know.
play
There was like
that game. It's
15,
not a fair
there was the
comparison.
revolving door of CEOs and all that.
Yeah.
So, I,
And I think all of those people are gone now. So like, I think
yeah.
looking at the landscape
It's just
today,
like
do you think?
James Gunn, please and Peter Safran, please just make a good
Yeah.
decision at this point. Like, but the thing is, remember, they do still technically answer to Zaslav, so, and he hates making money. So, you know, eh, yeah. I want to
I,
be excited because, like, he would be so good if we get Guy Ritchie. If we get like, who would be good after they're done with Deadpool and Wolverine? Get Paul Wernick and Red Reese to fucking write the movie. Boom, there you go, perfect. And then you get Jason Momoa star, you get all those guys to produce, and boom, you would have $1 billion and keep it rated R, $1 billion, easy. Like they need to do it. Well, and if not, I would say there's other directors that could possibly do it who like can do action comedy really well. I know this is kind of a with the Deadpool comparison. I know this is a cheap shot, but like I think David Leitch could also really do it. I know there was another director that was in between Guy Ritchie and our last guy, and that was Brad Payton. I don't know if he could do a good job, but he did. The only stuff he's really done is like, yeah, I mean, he did San Andreas and Rampage, which were like big blockbusters, but the problem is they were kind of forgettable. So I don't know if he would be like good for that. But then we have, Mr. Bayhem himself was the last one considered. And that was as late as 2018.
that
However,
was, you're right. This is He was
Yeah,
being eyed for it, and there was a lot of reporting going on in, I think, February of 2018. And I looked at that and I was like, I wouldn't mind some Bayhem paired up with the Lobo character, because I think the style of filmmaking that Michael Bay has, even though I think by the time these rumors were coming out, or this reporting was happening 6 years ago, this is before the pandemic, right before the
yeah.
pandemic, a year or two. Um, wasn't he making movies like 13 hours and stuff? He was kind of going through his phase where he was making these gritty, maybe
More
somehow like trying to get at
serious
some.
movies.
Right.
Yeah.
He wasn't, even though I think he was still directing Transformers, he was on the back end of that 5 movie slate, and he was trying to move more towards serious, like maybe more awards fair, if you will, or maybe
Awards
Michael Bay's
fair.
version of what counts as awards fair. Um,
I mean, he
but
just
this
did
is obviously,
Ambulance was his most recent movie, right?
yes, like full
That
of
was more
FPV drone shots.
serious. That was
But
more serious from what I
it
saw.
was serious sub, but like it was also not. Like, it was
But the thing is, it wasn't like Bad Boys 2
right.
levels of like over exaggerated and
True.
funny.
Right.
So, if we get like Bad Boys 2 level Michael Bay or The Rock Michael Bay, that would be
I
awesome for a Lobo movie. He just needs a really good writer. He just needs someone
Yeah.
who gets the character, and then he can just, direct his like explosions and all that shit. But you need to get a really good writer who understands the character, who understands his comedy. Because I feel like with Mike, like it would be like a perfect balance. Like you would need a writer who understood the original commentary of the character, that he was a satire of 80s, but then someone
Yeah.
get a director who's still stuck in the 80s trying to make 80s action movies, and boom, that would be kind of weirdly perfect. So I think he could do it. I mean, I'm not a huge like Michael Bay fan. I like some of his movies, like they're fun, they're ridiculous, like first
Dude,
Transformers, guilty
they're great
pleasure.
movies.
Armageddon
It's
is a fun time. The Rock,
mhm.
I would say, is like one of his few genuinely great action movies. I haven't seen any of the
That
Bad
that
Boys
movie
movies.
is it's actually, I think, like you said, it's underrated how good that film is.
Yeah,
You know?
like I
Yeah.
remember there was a great Sean Connery actually defended Michael Bay on that movie because it was like they were over, I think they were over budget, and like the
Yeah.
studio was like telling Michael Bay like, hey, rein it in. And so Sean Connery, using the clout of, James fucking Bond, he's like,
Uh-huh.
hey, get off your fucking ivory tower, this kid's doing a fucking good job, give us fucking more money. So they gave him
Uh,
money.
yeah.
Gotta love Sean Connery. God, I miss
Mhm.
that man. Anyway, but yeah, like
One
I just think
term
like
short. Yeah.
Bayhem
I
would, I
can't do the
think,
accent.
fit Lobo. I think it would. Like I know there's probably a lot of fans of Lobo that think Michael Bay would just be a little bit too much for him.
I
Like he
mean, and
wouldn't
this
understand what he was going for. But
yeah.
you got to get the writer. You got to get a good writer. Just don't get fucking Alex Kurtzman and Roberto Orsi to fucking do it, and you should be Gucci. Like you should
Yeah.
be golden for that. As long as you get a good writer who understands Lobo. So as long as you do that, maybe Jason Momoa could write the script. He seems to be a big enough fan. So boom, there you go. Just do that, and then Bayhem
I'm
can just, be in the background doing his thing and making it fun. But
yeah.
like you gotta
But dude, like the article on screen kind of is where the problem existed at the time. Like I don't think Jason Momoa is quite seen as the bankable star he's maybe seen as today. He also hadn't done, Aquaman really yet. And or was it 2018 the year? I think this is from February 2018. Aquaman released in December 2018. So this is just before Aquaman really blew up.
yeah.
A little under a year before that. So at the time they were looking at this, and the budget that Michael Bay's version of the movie would have required would have been 200 or upwards of 200 million dollars. That even today is a number that is probably reserved only for something like a Superman movie that's meant to kick off an entire cinematic universe, or like an Avengers movie, or like a movie that's maybe the second or third movie in a franchise where you've already got a track record of being profitable and making a lot of money. So I think financially they were looking at it and thinking this is probably not going to work for them, which rightfully so. I mean, like $200 million is a big risk to take for a character that's not necessarily considered a top tier, well known character. I know that us comic book fans really know about Lobo, but if you ask the average, moviegoer, chances are, half, if not most of them, will be like Lobo. Maybe kind of, sort of know the person, and you wouldn't necessarily get, oh yes, exactly what I know. Wasn't Jason like you would get more questions and like maybes and don't knows than yes, I know who Lobo is, and I think that kind of ultimately killed that iteration of the movie. But it's certainly, today, I think more possible than ever, especially if you take the route of like, whether you introduce him in Supergirl as a cameo and then bring him in with his own solo movie, or kind of just have him sort of do multiple cameos, give Jason Momoa a multi-picture deal, and then have him kind of show up in Superman and Supergirl, maybe in the Waller TV series or something like that, and then kind of like from there see what the value is behind giving him his own solo project. With that said, we did get a couple of comments from you guys, as we have talked about Lobo, like I mentioned at the start of the show many a times in recent weeks. So you guys have been letting us know what your thoughts are on the idea. And this is from a recent show where My Dream in Orbit mentioned having Lobo appear in Supergirl would make a lot of sense, even if it's just a cameo at the space bar Kara visits in the comic, which is from the Woman of Tomorrow comic. They can plant that seed for future appearances. This would be interesting because it certainly would be very similar to kind of what we have seen from like a character like Black Panther in Captain America: Civil War, where it was
Although he
not
had
so
a
much a
more substantial
cameo.
role there
It was a
than
substantial role, but I wouldn't mind necessarily seeing like Lobo sort of weave in and out of Supergirl's story,
hmm
but not necessarily being an antagonistic force. Or you could just give him a cameo. Like, I mean, if it was a cameo and if it's that kind of a short cameo, then I'd rather just have it be a post-credit sequence where Supergirl's just sitting at a space bar somewhere at the end of the movie, and like Lobo shows up, and then they do a toast, and like I can
and then
imagine
he's like,
how,
"Hey, what's your
like,
name?" Stitch, and
yeah,
then fucking it cuts to
and then
black.
like popcorn buckets in the air, like as people walk out of theaters. That's what that's gonna look like. Oh, holy shit! Like you just see those out of theater reaction videos. I can easily see that happening if they did go that route. And now there's another comment here, which I particularly got a laugh out of. This is from an older episode, but Big Ogreland 7325 said Batman, Superman, Martian Manhunter, Elongated Man, Hal Jordan, Zatanna, the original Captain Marvel, and Power Girl for her Titica's Maximus, which is a very interesting way of putting it. Gunn needs to do a Lobo movie. I mean, I guess these are just the characters that he wants to see that he's listing out. Um, of course, he's advocating for Lobo amongst many other characters. Do you think that there's any character in here in particular that you would really like to see? I know, well, he misspells Zatanna as Zantana, and I don't know if you meant Superman or Superman, but I mean, we are getting a Batman, we're getting a
Yeah,
Superman. We know that we are maybe gonna get a Captain Marvel, aka Shazam, at some point. We know we're getting a Hal Jordan in the Lantern TV
yeah.
series.
I would
There
love
were
to see
rumors about
Zatanna.
Zatanna and
Yeah.
Elongated Man. We don't know about Martian Manhunter, and we certainly don't know about Power Girl. What are your thoughts about all these characters?
I mean, I would love to see all of them. Like, I would love to see. Like, I feel like Elongated Man kind of gets a backseat to Plastic Man, which isn't a bad thing.
Yeah.
Like, I love Plastic Man, but I would like to
Didn't
see
like
Elongated.
James Gunn like post an image that the internet went crazy about? Was that Plastic Man or Elongated Man? The other,
I
I remember
believe it
this
was
from a few
Plastic
months
Man
ago.
because Plastic
Plastic
Man's the
Man.
more popular of the
Yeah.
two, even though he wasn't originally a DC comic character. So there's that. So
That's
fun
interesting.
fact. Yeah, he was a Quality Comics character. Same with the Blackhawks. Yeah, he was that because he was like one of the first like non-serious sort of characters. Like he was like one of
Yeah.
the first characters that was like funny. Like Plastic Man was like one of the first. Like
Right.
he was, I think it was like
So
1942. He
which
was
version of the character did we see in the Flash TV show? Was that Elongated Man or Plastic Man?
that was Elongated Man. Yeah, I think
Okay,
Arlie
so
sort of did a really good job there. I
yeah,
thought
I
he was
enjoyed
kind of
his
he kind
take.
of had
Yeah,
adopted more
yeah,
Plastic Man qualities because he was like funny.
that's true.
But he had more of the detective side of Elongated Man since he was an ex-detective and was a PI, so they kind of had more of that aspect. And but yeah, he was kind of not a combination of both, but majority Elongated Man with like a little twinge of Plastic Man.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, I think the comment that got the laugh out of me in this one was a power girl for Titica's Maximus. So there she is.
Yeah,
I mean, and it's unusual. They are unusually large, it's proportion wise. So Power Girl is also, of course, a character that we could run into if they were to go the multiverse route, because in the comics she's meant to be like an alternate version of Supergirl, right? From like another parallel
yeah, she was
Earth.
the quote unquote Supergirl of Earth 2, and then when Crisis on Infinite Earths happened, she became and Supergirl died during Crisis.
Yeah.
And so she eventually then became the mainstay of that like kind of character. And so yeah, she was on New Earth. And then I
Yeah.
think they did bring back Supergirl, but she was like character named she was like a gelatinous blob named Matrix that took the form of Supergirl.
Oh,
So
okay.
and then when they decided to reintroduce Kara, they did so, and there was that whole can of worms with continuity. Um so yeah, I think Power Girl would be awesome played by I think Alice Eve would be great. So yeah, but that's just me. um
I think she's
Power
been
Girl-
fan cast in that for quite some time, and
yeah.
I mean, I think like Hollywood probably looks at that. Well, I say Hollywood as if they're like one big entity. I think it's more a matter of which version of the character you're trying to have. Like, are you trying to get a character that's going to be like young, sort of like along the lines of why do I keep forgetting her name? What's the name of the actress they've cast to play Supergirl in the DCU? I always forget her name for some reason. She was in Game of Thrones. Um, Millie Alcock. So
Yeah.
I think like Millie Alcock is obviously going to be playing a younger version of Supergirl that kind of grows into the role over the course of maybe several movies and crossovers. Whereas I think if you were to bring in Alice Eve, you're looking at a version of the character that's a bit more of a veteran and more experienced and has been
Yeah.
around the block a few times, which would work well as a nice counter to like the Supergirl in the mainline DCU. So it would be interesting. I think that would be a really good casting choice. Personally, I think she's got the acting chops. She's certainly got the looks for the character, so she can pull it off. I know the internet probably wants to see like Sydney Sweeney play it, the character. Certainly, I think the big Ogerland might be thinking along those lines. But I mean, hey, getting back to the Jason Momoa as Lobo idea, um, if I were to give you this and pose this question to you, like let's talk about this rumor again from Daniel RPK real quick. Yes or no, is Jason Momoa's Lobo gonna show up either in Superman, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, or somewhere within the next 3 years within the DCU? Or do you think this is still a yet to be determined situation where they've had conversations, but they really are like, we already have so much on our plate, we don't necessarily want to go down this route yet?
Um, hmm. I don't know. I think I mean it's a lot to ask, but like I think I don't know, whatever they it just like I just want I just want DC to make good movies again. Is that too much to ask? Like is it just really too much to ask? I think it
I don't
is,
think it's
but
too much to ask, quite frankly. I think it's
it's like do they want to? Because WB seems to be allergic to money, so, unless
hey,
it's for
dude, we've been
Marvel.
talking about Superman for weeks, and it looks like that movie is, gonna be really, really good. At least going by the set picks. Of course, it could turn out to be a terrible film, but we gotta give it its time and under the sun, and then judge it on its merits when it does come out next year. But if they were to bring in Lobo, I personally think it wouldn't be such a bad spot to maybe have him cameo in a post-credit scene with Supergirl. Like that would be
Yeah.
a great place to do it, and then you're just gonna take it from there. But yeah, we'll leave it at that for now, guys. I mean, hey, we love to talk about your comments as always. If you are leaving comments in these videos, we will go back, find the good ones, talk about them like we did today. We will dive into the theories, and the rumors, of course. I mean, the big grain of salt. Nobody knows for sure if there is indeed a Lobo movie in development or not. If there is, then hopefully we'll hear about it soon enough. If there isn't, then maybe we'll get to see a cameo. Whether Jason Momoa is going to be playing the character or not, I think it's a home run it's just waiting to be hit. Like they can't make a bad choice if they were to go with Jason Momoa in that character. It's just not confirmed yet. It's there's no official confirmation. There's no inside scoop that he's been cast. Daniel RPK just kind of threw it out there that even he
Yeah.
said he's reportedly being considered. So that's a long ways off from being he's cast as. So we'll wait until we get a confirmation on that. But until we do, and we'll keep an eye out. And when we do get it, then we'll talk about it. We'll dive into all the possibilities of how Lobo could intertwine into the various stories that DCU is going to be telling over the next few years. But until the next episode of DCU Daily, as always, guys, hit the like button. That really helps us out with the algorithm. Hit the subscribe button if you like this content and you want to be back here on a daily basis. As the name, it says DCU Daily, so that does imply that we are here daily. So yes, we are, and we hope that you stop by again to check in on what's going on in the world of DC, and hit the notification bell so that way if you're busy, it will give you a notification when we go up live or we have a new video going up like today. So until next time, John, take us Maximus.
I guess.